Welcome to the fourth edition of Old Scribes. My name is Matt Aguilar, and this is my partner, George Willis. And how's it going today, George?
It's all good today in Miami. A little rainy, but otherwise, nice day. Had a great sports weekend. A lot of things going on. Little NFL action. Had a little WNBA playoffs. Baseball pennant races are heating up, and we had Anthony Joshua in the ring again.
Yes, we did. Why don't you start us off with that one? Got a text from you during that fight, and your thoughts were very strong about what you thought about that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I know the guy's done a lot for British boxing. He's loved there, gold medal winner, and all of that, and a good guy it seems as well. But to me, he's just a hair above an average heavyweight fighter. I mean, every time I see him and I start to believe in him, he disappoints me. He disappointed. I was there covering the big Andy Ruiz fight, and this was going to be his coming out party, so to speak, in the United States, and that ended in a tremendous upset. Was bitterly disappointing for all the British fans, and he really hasn't really made much of an impression to me since. I know he's had a couple of good fights leading up to this one, but with all the expectation that was going on in Wembley the other day and sold out arena, 94,000 people and all of that, it was just to get blown out like that was really, really telling.
Yes, I completely agree. He looked terrible. I mean, he looked stiff. He looked inexperienced. His guard was down. I mean, Dubois is a strong puncher. I mean, nobody quite predicted. Most people didn't predict this upset, but everybody knew that Dubois could punch. He's a big, strong heavyweight, and his left hand was down. He just looked like out of it, like he didn't want to be there. Maybe it's the pressure. I'm sure the guy's under a lot of that, but he just looked just terrible, and he was caught in the first 10 seconds of the fight.
Yeah.
Knocked down, I think, 3 times. The last time was just devastating. He was kind of clowning during the fight, which just, I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, he to me, and I don't know him at all. I've never really sat down and had a good, lengthy one-on-one interview with him. It's always been in a lot of groups, like when he was in New York. But to me, he just doesn't seem like he seems like the guy who enjoys being sort of the heavyweight champion, but really, doesn't. It's not really in his heart and in his soul. You had these guys like Tyson and Holyfield and even fighters who weren't even that good. They have this look about them that when they get in the ring or they get ready for a fight, where you can see them almost change. They go from being a good guy to being somebody who's getting ready, prepared for war, and wants to just take somebody's head off. I don't really see that in Joshua at all. He walked into the ring and kind of took his time and stepped to the ring and didn't really bounce around the ring like a lot of fighters do when they get ready to go to battle. He just kind of said hello to everybody and smiled and waved to the crowd and had this big old robe on. And he didn't look like he was ready to do battle. He looked like he was just there to be part of a party. And boom, and Dubois just came out like the heavyweight champion supposed to come out like, okay, we're ready for business. It's time to go to war. Let's do this. And I thought it was a little insulting to him that he got introduced first every time, coming into the ring and then in the ring. I thought they'd split it, but, it was all the Anthony Joshua show. And then Dubois just blew him out. He looked like he was the heavyweight champ.
Those are 2 great points about him coming out in first, being introduced first. I mean, Dubois, give him the respect of being a world champion. Joshua does not have a belt. He didn't have one going into this fight, and you're exactly right. That's pretty bad that the promotion would allow something like that happen. Not that it hasn't happened before, but yeah, agreed. And also, I've had a feeling too that he had this game face on, right? Almost
Yeah.
as though he was trying to convince himself before the bell rang, first bell,
Mhm.
almost like he was trying to convince himself that he was really gonna, be violent. That he
Mhm.
was really, and that kind of speaks to your point about, him kind of going through the motions and looking at everything else and being there for the party. But he really, I think he was trying to convince himself that he was there to fight.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that there's so many people wanting to see him back in the ring because he's making people rich. He's
Right.
making people rich. He's a draw,
Mhm.
a huge, huge mammoth draw over there, and he
Mhm.
could probably get knocked out two or three more times, and people would still go see him fight. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, he has captured the imagination of the British public, and he will always do so. I think, and that's why he's been pretty adamant about not retiring. But I think his behavior during the course of the fight, his behavior after the fight, his behavior after the Usyk fight, in which he kind of grabbed the belt from him and put it on his waist and started kind of, I don't know, histrionics. Is just
Right.
uh, it's bizarre. It's bizarre behavior,
Mhm.
and that could be that could be indicative of some brain damage. It could be indicative of some wear and tear. He's been in this game for a long time,
Right.
taken a lot of massive shots during
Mhm.
the course of his career fighting heavyweight. So I would like nothing more than to see him retire.
Right.
Um, a lot of people take offense to that for whatever reason these days, as though you're a hater or whatever. But no, I don't want to see the guy hurt. Um,
Mhm.
and I think you know that could that maybe already be happening, and it could happen more so in the future.
Yeah, he's probably made a lot of money, I'm sure. He's had some huge, huge fights and probably smart enough to have a couple of good paydays there, then lock some money away. And once you get once you get that kind of money, it's a whole different kind of game, and your motivations change a little bit. And he is getting older, and why go through all this every time? And obviously he doesn't have the best chin. We
Yeah.
That's clear. And
Yeah.
if he's going to walk around the ring with his hands around his waist, then he's he's in the wrong business.
That was just the one thing to me that just was really stood like, what are you thinking?
Mhm.
You at 34 years old, leaning back as though he's a prime Muhammad Ali, as though he's going to avoid a punch from someone who's 6 or 7 years younger. I mean, he got caught immediately. It's like he had never fought before.
Mhm.
It was weird. It was weird. Um, and then on the other hand, I thought, like you said, Dubois behaved like a heavyweight champion. He went in there to take the
Mhm.
heavyweight title or to defend the heavyweight title to show that he's deserving of the belt.
Mhm.
Um, he's a fun heavyweight. He comes to fight, and he's a feel good story because no one expected this of him. Uh, that said, um, there's nothing particularly special about him. I mean, I think he's got a power which makes him special and fun to watch. But I think we should probably enjoy him um, while he's here because you know he's one of those fighters that will probably be here and be gone in short order. But he's a fun heavyweight.
Right. I think it's going to be some sort of a mix of a lot of these heavyweights having one or two fights a year against each other and maximizing their financial potential, and then they'll be getting out of the business. How long is Tyson Fury going to keep fighting?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So you'll get about two or three more fights at least out of these guys, and maybe some of them will be entertaining. It wasn't a bad fight to watch.
No.
Joshua just looked just looked so bad. You thought,
Yeah.
you even thought he was about to rally right before he got knocked out. You're like, okay, he's back in the fight. He's throwing some punches. He's getting aggressive. But then you see where his hands were, and he just was so wide open. And bam, that was it.
I'm not sure what he expected. He'd been getting clocked with that right hand
Right.
for 4 rounds, and he lands a shot. He finally does something positive,
Mhm.
and then he just rushes in. Like it was, I don't know. I don't know if it's he almost fought like he couldn't wait to get out of there.
Right.
One way or the other. One way or the other.
The other, exactly.
But one thing you did say, and that I brought up to you earlier too, is that I think technically, Dubois was definitely better. But what's happened to going to the body? Where'd that go? There was no body work. I think Dubois could have knocked him out in 2 rounds
Right.
had he gone to the body. It's just, I don't know. You think back to guys like, Joe Frazier and Mike Tyson. Certainly these guys are not the height of those guys, but you go to the body in order to weaken the guy. That guys can recover from headshots. They can't recover as quickly from body shots. And I really feel like if Dubois had gone downstairs even a few times, there was one point that he got warned for a low blow. Couldn't even tell if it was low or not. But in the that was right before the end of the fight. But had he gone to the body in the first or second round, I think he would have. I think that fight would have ended a lot sooner.
I mean, that's a little bit of a lost art in boxing as well, too. People going to the body and knowing how to do that. You see it in the lighter weight divisions, but not so much in the heavyweights anymore. They just want to go in there and bang and slug it out and get it over as fast as they can.
Right. And technically, I think it's certainly not what we grew up on, and covered, like Larry Holmes and
right.
Lennox Lewis and and even Lewis didn't really go to the body a lot because he was a big guy too, but he had a lot of tools in the tool.
He worked that jab, and then if he had to mix it up and get rough, he could do that too. I remember that Klitschko fight at Staples Centers that nobody really expected to be much of a fight, and that was one of the best heavyweight fights in recent era, really, with Lennox doing everything he could and needing to do everything he could just to pull out the fight against Vlad.
And that's the fight that convinced Lewis to retire.
Right.
I remember, Lewis kind of, falling on his stool at the end of like the 6th round, and I didn't think he was going to be able to make it much longer, and then that's when they stopped the fight.
No, it was a brutal fight.
But you're right. That was really, not only was it a good, entertaining heavyweight fight, but it was skillful, and I think that's probably something we really didn't see much of on Saturday, although it was entertaining.
Yeah, and that was against Vitali. That wasn't Vladimir. That was Vitali.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
yeah,
it was Vitali. Yep,
that was a great fight.
All right, done a boxing for now. There's nothing coming up this weekend.
No,
nothing big.
Let me ask you one question though. Do you want to see a rematch of that? I mean, they're trying to talk about it.
No. I mean, no. He didn't. Joshua, I'm saying, didn't. Show that he really wanted to be there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So after being humiliated and demolished in 5 rounds by an underdog, I don't know. I guess you could sell the redemption angle, but I'm not really interested in seeing a rematch. I think Dubois is younger, not bigger, but younger and stronger at this point in their careers. And I think Joshua needs to probably hang him up. How about you?
I agree with you. Let's move on, do something else. All
right, let's do it on. Let's move on. So let's say it's an interesting week 3 in the NFL. My fantasy football team is disastrous at 0-3.
Wow.
Yeah, terrible.
I got a couple of wins. I had the Packers defense, picked them up on waivers last week, and they went nuts. And had a good. I have Derek. I have Henry. And he had a good week. And who else? Just about everybody else did pretty decently. So I was After 0-4, because we play 2 games a week, now I'm 2-4. So trying to get healthy.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Well, good for you. I don't I don't foresee much success this season for me.
Mhm.
Uh, and but I do see a lot of success for in our segment of good, bad, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Uh, how about those Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah. I
Wow.
guess, yeah, I guess Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback again, coming off a really, I guess, his best game since taking over, right?
Oh,
Uh,
I would
yeah,
say. I mean, as a Charger fan, I had to sit through the whole thing. It was over by the time it went to the fourth quarter. Uh, yeah, he looked really strong, and it's not just running. He's passing the ball very
yeah.
well, making smart decisions.
Mhm.
Um, I think Pittsburgh has found their quarterback. It's a mutual like. The team likes him, and he likes the team, and that's
Mhm.
good to see after what he kind of went through here in Chicago. It wasn't pretty. You could tell that relationship had fractured and that it just wasn't fruitful anymore. And so, even though it was against the Chargers, I was glad to see Justin Fields, uh, you know, going, doing good things with the Steelers. And I think the Steelers are going to be an unexpected force through as the season goes on.
What happened with Fields in Chicago? I mean, I know he started out, he was playing pretty well, he was putting up some big numbers. Um, I think I
Um,
actually picked him up for my fantasy team, and then the bottom sort of fell out.
yeah, I think from what I've been told is that the relationship just wasn't there, and then when it started to like come apart once he wasn't turning into the superstar that they thought he was going to be. Um, and then when the first round pick became available and it became obvious that that's the direction that they were going to go, then you know all bets were off and that was over. But I think they expected him to be a superstar, and we know that quarterbacks struggle. 99% of them struggle when they go into the league without playing at least a few games or a year behind him. Patrick Mahomes did it, and I think that's the reason for all the success. To be thrown in there like that
Yeah,
is just completely unrealistic to do well.
yeah, and it's, I mean, it's starting to be pretty evident. You had Mac Jones, he had a
Yeah,
decent year, and then he flamed out, and Sam Darnold with the Jets, and the list goes on and on. It's just the same shame that they can't wait a little bit on these guys. That Bryce Young over at Carolina, now they're benching him. So what are you going to do now? You've kind of shot his confidence a little bit. Now you have to build him up all over again, or you're just going to get rid of him. And you're back with Andy Dalton. Okay, you beat the Raiders, whoop de damn do. But how are you going to build a franchise around that?
I mean, look at the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. He didn't jump right in there. Look, he spent you know several games behind Drew Bledsoe before he had to even go in, and I think that is the key. You can't just be thrown in there. But this is something that goes back what I mean to Ryan Leaf. He was expected to save the Charger franchise 25 years ago or whatever, and
Right.
look how well that turned out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, every quarterback should have a time where they can just learn to be a pro,
Yep.
learn how to practice, learn the speed of the game, and everything that's involved in being part of the NFL. And you can't pick that up in a few weeks of OTAs and a couple of weeks of training camp and get ready and go in there and play at that level. It's very, very difficult, and you can even have a good year, and then the next year you struggle. There's
Yeah.
no guarantees.
And I
So
think and I think Fields is probably one of those exceptions where he maintained his confidence. I think a lot of these guys just they're just mentally broken, and they're kids really,
right.
they're pretty much, and expecting them to deal with that failure and expecting to deal with the fan pressure and everything.
The media and the fan pressure. Now
Media,
you've
yeah,
got social media out there.
yeah, right. Oh yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
and you expect these guys to overcome all that. I mean, it's much more pressure than ever was, 20, 30 years ago. So,
Right.
um, yeah, definitely. I
But
mean,
you get a few exceptions like a Josh Allen and and
and
everybody
that's what they
thinks he can
want.
happen.
Yeah. But no, the era of sitting behind and watching, uh, taking those mental reps, right?
Mhm.
For
Right.
quarterbacks, I think that era is long gone. Every team in the NFL wants to win right now.
Right.
And so, uh, but there is a guy over in Washington who's doing pretty good as
Right.
of, yeah, Jaden Daniels looked like a future superstar. One of the most efficient quarterback performances by a rookie in NFL history.
Yeah.
That was impressive.
Yeah, I know the Commanders are happy about it because they really need something good to happen for that franchise. And I think it's on the way back, really. The change in ownership, I think, has been tremendous for the fan base and even for the team and a lot of the different things they're trying to do down there. So to get a big win like that against what we thought was going to be a good Cincinnati team, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's still a really good win for Daniels and the Commanders and the new coaching staff and everybody involved down there. So they come off the win over the Giants. They back it up with this one as well. So I don't know if they're a team to be reckoned with, but at least they're starting to change the culture down there, and that's good to see.
Yes, absolutely is proud history, regardless of whatever name they are this year or whatever their uniforms look like. It's a pretty proud history, so it was good to uh, see them win again, and at least for right now, be talked about a little bit.
Right.
All right, the bad would be the Cowboys.
Can't wait to put them there, right? I mean, they're already talking about Bill Belichick. I mean, is Bill Belichick going to be hired? Are they going to get rid of McCarthy before the season's over? Is Bill Belichick coming? I mean, here we go now. Here we go.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I think you know everybody knows the one constant that's making this happen year after year, right? I mean, it's
Jerry.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I saw a meme the other day that said there was a press conference called Jerry Jones is going to fire the owner. So it yeah it's just so obvious that his intrusiveness and his sticking his nose in to football, actual football operations, football, you know the game itself has just um, driven this team to like non-entity status. It's just
Mhm.
it just doesn't. Everybody knows that they have enough very good players to make it to the playoffs, but no one ever expects them to do anything beyond that. And I mean, their last Super Bowl win came in 1996. We're looking at 1995 season. That's almost 30 years ago.
Right. I mean, if he wasn't the owner of the team, how many general managers would he have fired by now after the result that they've had or the non-results that they've had? I mean, he's probably gone through about 5 or 6 of them by now. Yet he
100%.
continues to just make the decisions and run the team and think he's the right guy. And I don't know, is he ever going to change and say, you know what, I'm going to step back and give somebody else a shot and see what they can do? But I don't think his ego is ever going to let him do that.
Right. I mean, we've been hearing these stories for that long, right? Going back
Mhm.
to his whole blow up with Jimmy Johnson was because he was basically wanting to be involved in the X's and O's in a way that he wasn't qualified to do.
Yeah, I was actually there at probably one of the most memorable days in my career. I was in Dallas. I believe I was covering an NCAA tournament there in Dallas, and then word spread that Jimmy Johnson might be fired, and that seemed to be incredible at the time. So we all rushed down to Valley Ranch, all of us that were covering the basketball tournament and some of the football writers. And we were at Valley Ranch for a number of hours in a small room pressed up against the door, waiting for Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson to come out. And this was, we must have been there for 5 or 6 hours just waiting and waiting. And then finally the announcement came down that Jimmy Johnson was leaving the team. So the first thing we did was we hopped in a car and we went out to the nearest golf course to get Emmitt Smith because he was playing golf that day. And he was just stunned and upset. And that should have never happened. And the Cowboys haven't really recovered since then.
No, they were, they brought in Switzer, who, they got him one Super Bowl, and because of he couldn't screw up what he had that last year. But
right
after that, it just flamed out as we would expect it to, with the owner of the team sticking his nose in there. And yeah, it's unbelievable. I can't believe I'm saying these words, but I think I actually feel sorry for Dallas Cowboy fans.
I mean, it's almost getting like that, right? You almost start to feel bad for them. Nah, it's okay.
Then you watch the game with them, and then you don't feel bad for them anymore.
Right, exactly.
All right, and one of the other bads would be, we just talked about them, the Bengals. What's going on in Cincinnati?
I don't know. They should be a much better team. At 0-3, not many teams, if any, are going to make the playoffs, much less the Super Bowl. Then you kind of have to wonder what happened so quickly. Burrow was supposed to be healthy, and he had a decent game. He threw for 324 yards, but they still get beat by Washington because the defenses can't stop the run. So I guess it's going to be a long season down there. I don't see them making the playoffs, and you just wonder if everybody can stay on the same page for the rest of the season without the whole thing imploding.
Yeah,
because that might happen.
Yes, got to wonder about at this point. I mean, it's probably entirely too early by reasonable standards, but by NFL standards, you'd have to think that Coach Zach Taylor may be, if he doesn't turn this thing around, he could be on the hot seat by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think there's going to be definitely a lot of heat on him, but if he can finish strong, if they can get a couple of wins together and finish, I don't know, 9-7, whatever they need to get to 9-8 or whatever it's going to be, or something like that. Maybe get a winning season out of it. They can salvage something and get ready for next year, but this doesn't look like it's going to be for the year for the Bengals at all.
Yeah. And then is there anyone else you want to talk about in terms of the bad?
Well, just the Dolphins. They're in a bit of trouble because of their quarterback situation. When you're down to your third string quarterback already, that's a very tough situation for them. And Coach Mike Macdonald isn't quite sure who's going to start this Sunday. You never want to be in that position when you're talking about your quarterback. And so Tyreek Hill wasn't a factor at all last week. So if he's not a factor in a game and you don't know who your quarterback's going to be, that's a pretty ugly situation to be in. And that's where Miami finds itself heading into its next game, week 4, not knowing who's going to be the starting quarterback. And Tyreek Hill's already been through a lot, having almost been arrested going to the game the other week. And now he's a non-factor in the next game, loses his quarterback to a concussion, down to the third string quarterback. Oh my God, it's getting ugly.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly things went south in Miami, right? Yeah. I mean, here we are 3 weeks into the season and it's looking like they're going to struggle mightily. Mm-hmm. I don't. Without a quarterback, they're just the way this league is built and these teams are built. It's just it's an uphill battle. And then going with the ugly. I'm sorry to say this, but your Las Vegas Raiders are
Yeah.
kind of lost to what I thought was the worst team in the league.
Well, they
To
were
my
the worst team in the league. Yeah,
Hmm?
they were the worst team in the league.
Yeah,
They benched their starting quarterback, gave up on the rookie number one choice, Bryce Young. You're going to carry out old ass Andy Dalton and have him start, and you make him look like Johnny Unitas. I mean, that to me that speaks to coaching, and it was a little disconcerting when the first thing AP did was to blame the players and say, some of these guys made business decisions during the game, and that's not the kind of rhetoric that builds team chemistry. It's
right.
supposed to be a we thing, and that's including the coaches. When you start pointing out players and saying certain players are making business decisions, that's not a good thing to say about your ball players. So I know Tom Coughlin is doing a lot of work with AP down there, so maybe Coughlin will get into his ear about that. But they had such a good win against the Ravens, then to come back and lay such a big egg against Carolina, weren't really even in the game. It
Yeah,
wasn't like it was close or anything. Just got beat physically, got out coached, lost the game in every way possible to a team that was already, looking like it was getting ready to tank the season. But now they've got to play the Browns. So you got a tough game this week.
yeah.
Now you put yourself in a difficult situation. So we'll have to see how the Raiders respond.
Right, right. Key week for them. And then I guess finally, the Jags.
Yeah, the Jags, I think they still have a lot of potential. I can't believe that team is struggling the way it has, especially offensively.
Right.
Evan Ingram's been a little bit of a disappointment. I know he's been injured, but big things were expected of him, and hasn't been able to get on the field. But maybe they can turn things around. They've got a lot of talent on that team, and I expect them to do a lot better than they have.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of expected Trevor Lawrence to be one of the marquee players, in the league at this point, but he was kind of started getting there. Um, when he came back and beat my Chargers from like 25 points down. Remember that in the playoffs?
Right, right.
That was terrible. But yeah, it just kind of seems from there. It's just kind of it hasn't worked out since in Jacksonville yet. So we'll see. All right, so let's talk a little bit about. We have a native El Pasoan going back to his old team this weekend. Aaron Jones is now with the Vikings. Going to go play Green Bay. And you sent me that kind of the letter that he wrote to the fans of Green Bay and to the people of Green Bay, which I thought was incredibly such a nice thing for him to do. But what were your thoughts when you read that?
Well, it was one of those stories in the Players Tribune, and it's that platform that I think Derek Jeter started, where players basically write their own stories about whatever topic that's near and dear to their hearts. I know, Michael Phelps did a big story with them on his mental health and all of that. So you get the players who use that platform. They're usually very insightful articles, very heartfelt. Whatever they want to discuss, usually it has something to do with either their hometown or some sort of foundation or charity or personal thing they've gone through. And I didn't know Aaron Jones. I had left the area by the time he came through. So, you could probably speak about his years at UTEP and whether you knew he was going to be this good. But I've had him on my fantasy teams a couple of times and just kept an eye out for him. He went to the game last week. He had the big sombrero on. I don't know if you noticed that. And I guess the announcers didn't pick up the fact that, he's from El Paso, but, they kind of, oh, nice hat or whatever they said. But he always represents. He always talks about
Yes.
the area, the borderland. and his people. So I think he's just a credit to El Paso and where he grew up, and even the National Football League.
Yeah, I think he was after my time too, so I didn't know Aaron, but I've known people who have known him and dealt with him, and just a nice young man, great family. Just someone who just is proud of his hometown, represents the hometown very well, is always wearing the sombrero, is like a pride thing. He's always saying 915 to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Just a good, solid guy. And every time I see him, I'm an Aaron Jones fan. He brings pride to a city, I think, that doesn't always get a lot of notice. Especially the more north you get, and so I thought that with his words saying that some of his peers that recognized him, and it's like sometimes that's how a lot of El Pasoans feel. It's we're being recognized for something, and so I thought it was a great entry, and I also just think he's a great young man, and I hope he can stay healthy for several more years.
Right.
All right. Well, my battery is dying here, so we better wrap this up before I couldn't find my charger. But one thing I do want to sign off with is, and I'm sure you have some thoughts about this, but we were talking about Oakland. No more Coliseum. It's done. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I finally got to see a Raider game at the Coliseum, probably maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Mark Sanchez was the Jets quarterback, and that was actually the first time I'd been to a Raider game at the Coliseum. So it was very much a spiritual experience for me to be among that many Raider fans, because when I grew up in Las Cruces, they were mostly Cowboy fans, and since we didn't actually have a pro team in the area, a lot of the other kids had different teams, Steeler fans, Miami fans. But I think I might have been the only Raider fan. And, as I got older and left the area and, ran into a lot of different kind of Raider fans, you kind of understand you're not the only one. But to be at a Raider game and watch the game there was a spiritual experience. And I got to go a couple, 3 or 4 times. But the place was a dump. I mean, it was an absolute dump. Shea Stadium was a dump too, but the Coliseum was a dump. It had to go.